Zebra's MK Ultra Sutra. As long as someone can suffer over a heartbreak, they're dangerous. People should be able to communicate about anything in a way that's pleasant on the brain, or they're insane. It's in the energy, not how they mean it, but as of yet, people don't necessarily know that they exist. People don't have the same energy. People involve themselves in groups and communities in a way, as I put it in my elephant tusk, that overcomplicates their brains. And if they want to recognize anything else, they're stuck on it. I had to become happy all the time to notice that everyone is unhappy. It's more ominous. They're mute, quiet, and always not allowing themselves to realize that they only have so much time. People in general shift something in the body language or don't communicate openly when they're involved in plots. This is my cowardice. There's some part of the nervous system that people are pretending they don't have. It's a crisis. I always have the feeling, whether in a house or outside, that I'm in the nature and there are no towns or places. This isn't the muscle coordination. Everything I do is henceforth easy. What people do for their jobs is inexcusable, as they're hallucinating as if what they do is at their jobs. And if I'm up on the mattress, it's like a treehouse, like somewhere with some shelter and not rigid muscle coordination. That only so many minutes are set up not based on having fun is botchsome. It's a forced upon unnatural condition. My book is about the fact that people don't realize they're ripped off. I always feel furious, but it feels happy. That's what my sanity feels like. The Jung people are trying to convince everyone that religious multicultural imagery is inherent in a way that supports the power structure. This is an education. I was surprised that they faked several synchronicities in my life by army means, because I read a few books and seemed like they were insufficient years ago. This is another what amounts to neurolinguistics that I attack in Elephant Tusk. My book is about what education does to people's heads. All synchronicities are faked, whether inside or outside. I knew they weren't going to do any psychedelic studies, no matter the benefits, because the shitty spy I dated didn't offer me any opportunities to do psychedelic research, even if we were to be compadres. Although she insisted I go to school as an apparent forerunner of a crossover between academia and psychedelia. She was sent by another foundation to make school trippy, then postpone and prevent any psychedelic studies. The whole organism brain relation is always supposed to have the sense of being a creature on the planet. Education is to blame for this. What I mean by people not caring about people is obvious by the secondhand support of any culture based on funding war. It's impossible for people to become sane and to support war. Everyone in my life has been miserable assholes. Everyone in my life have been miserable assholes. I do not mean the people in my life. I mean caring about the people who exist. There's something poignant in my life, although I'm a bit odd, of not caring about anyone, although this could change. It shouldn't be forced. Above all, here, I hate the notion of faking that someone is cared about because they should be cared about in a way that's miserable. I have a beautiful odyssey of a life because I get to punch people. I'm more of a brawler than anyone realized. Hopefully, it won't always be like this, but I've set out since I was young to tackle the statesman, and if I could, I'd kill anyone who runs this forsaken world. There's places where physical altercations should take place that are prevented by the police officers, where people can actually sense what would be improvable by the physical altercations. One of the worst things is to be dishonest about liking someone. If people were honest about disliking each other, they wouldn't be able to draw things out. It's been obvious for a while that I'm a radical feminist. If anyone paid attention, they'd realize I hate men who pretend to know what they're talking about in a way that's sociopathic towards other people mistaking that they knew something. There's something flawless in the body about what someone likes and dislikes. It gets perverted. My life is aconjurious because I know the great things I can do. I'm capable of them. People don't deal with their own sense of incapacity. If people were honest about this flawless sense of what they like and dislike, they wouldn't have to base the relationship on sustaining handiwork and busy work, toddling and tottering. That's what makes them miserable. There seems to be a blustergast of Speedos around the fact that anyone would actually touch upon their sense that things should improve fully. It's no mousy wousy thing or pinchy pinchy thing to compromise someone with this government, but education has prevented people from contacting the way things are really run. This is part of what I mean that nobody has cared for me in my life, but this is something I'm teaching people. Oftentimes, people get the sense that someone is ethereous, but they are just part and parcel with some secret group or plot. I always get the sense on Facebook, and I've always got the sense on Facebook that I was in a verm shawl. The way the responses come doesn't make any formable chartography with the brain's real sense. It's a government website, and I intended to fuck with them whether they admitted it or not. People are not really mysterious, they hide things. They do things based on one muscle reflex needing to repeat itself, or else they'd loosen up, and this is preventing them from realizing that they're alive. I got the sense, solely, fully, and only that education was a test to see whether I'd ascribe anything true to the statesman. It was supposed to be in a different type of government than how things are really set up and how they really set things up. This came to me based on how I feel my goddess. If people could feel my goddess, surely they'd drop their Anu scrawl. Something in my brain has had to take on the form of Fort Clairvoyant peaky investigation to deal with anything in what they call this country or nation or whatever. That's what I mean when I say it's all bullshit. It's preventing anyone from storing inside themselves. Someone should feel in the moment that they throw this bullshit aside that they can do anything they want to. But I'm making fun of the spiritual gurus. I'm a political person, but they don't let any information get through due to military intelligence. No military can be composed of wise, smart, sane people ever. The only real politics is about human freedom. People are supposed to have the graceful and gracious, gratitudious sense that they're thankful to this planet for their life. This is something with brain development. It's completely against the books they allowed to be published. Nobody can be grateful in this way and partake in the foundation set by such things as the armies. This is why they prevent as much as possible, not so much drug use itself, but the ethical merit of the drug use in its full swing. There's nothing warbly or chin fa about this principle. Nobody should feel unhappy, but it's completely between a human being and my goddess the reasons for the happiness. They have so many things set up as if happiness is prescriptive, and not as if the unhappiness is due to the society itself. That's basically the point of the publishing people in totality. I know by the fact that people do not spend long enough having sex, days, weeks, whatever, that the whole thing is fucked up even. Even if they do, it's a form of alleviation nose drops. There's something in the human body that cannot stand the fact of war. Everyone is dealing with this by becoming somehow nonchalant. It's not nonchalant about their pain, it's nonchalant about the pleasure they're missing out on. I only had to read so many things to get the overall sense of the current state of human knowledge. Reading more could lead to malbrosia, could lead to becoming too much like these suckers. I read some books to get a view of how they misrepresent information. It only took a few comparition Warfumtongably to get the sense of where things are at. But I say that to point out how gibberish the state's representation is, the religion's representation is, compared to the human heart. I mean something different by that. Hey man, that's my line. This is also how I know I've changed history with my principles and my brain science. There's a second line of text in Elephant Tusk, which is all about how they misrepresent information. People should not be afraid of feeling feminine. This is why I, for some time, kept my radical feminism secretively to myself. It told me something about how they misrepresent the human body. Women also avoid feeling feminine. My feminism is in line with liberation, so obviously women who are unfeminine could get in my cahoots, by which I mean in the way. People should be doing drugs to develop a sensitivity to how information is taken in by the brain. They're too well read. I've not actually been afraid of death in my life, but coping with the things I've realized about the social situation. There's an obscene amount of sociopathy, narcissism built into the education effects. It means something different. You don't have to be close to anyone who is unhealthy for you, but if you don't care about people at large, then you become unhealthy anyways. People can only relate to death as something in a living brain. That's what I mean. The fear of death is the fear of total change, but this has nothing to do with death. It's a neurophoresis. I realize that people are talking as if they're in more than one place because they're talking out of turn with what they've actually experienced. This is entirely predictable in some part of the brain. If it's provoked to dealing with the inconvenience of how people do not care about anyone. I realize they're talking about things they haven't experienced. This is surely some type of mind control. People are hallucinating, but not like the mystical literature says. The existence and obvious influence of this perennial philosophy says that you only need to read so much to get how deluded, how stupid the mystical literature is. They're hallucinating that they're not animals and that they're someplace else. It's sad. Anyone who wants to get something about life has to come up against the state and against the religions. That's how I knew it wasn't worth reading much of anything more unless I felt like it. It's an intimate fact that your brain has been infiltrated, that's been controlled by your own willing participation, an attempt to get by. This is another theme of my book. I often feel like a busted toy, a busted Simon Says, because I had to deal with this intimate fact. I'm furious at what they have made possible in people's lives and what they've done to my brain in particular, even though I've succeeded in undoing the spells. The natural response is to be violent, but I get the sense that I can't say that. It's survival. It is not a natural sense to mistake that you are someplace in particular, such as this or that nation. You're supposed to feel that you're alive. It is a fact that I, despite this mind control, have become sane and everyone else is still crazy. They'll quarrel most about this fact, perhaps. Psychiatry has been preventing this fact as a matter of insanity. That's what I'm talking about. It's set up to keep people insane. But even some of them might argue, but it's purely on the basis that they don't realize the origins or the sources of how they represent their data. I can say funny things based on things that are true. People can't even do this. It's because of psychiatry. Whether they admit it or not, they're trying to prevent a funny man. People wouldn't ascribe so much impact to statements if they were sure they had a basis of sanity and happiness. That's why everyone I've ever been around have through and through been assholes. Happiness is like the backbone of the right brain function. So different statements can be handled, then you can just go about and not worry about it so much. But they're trying to make it a deballed Christian thing, whether they admit it or not. That's what the Buddhists, other spiritual gurus are doing too. It's probably another kind of mind control. It's impossible to care about anything religious with richness of stimuli. I saw some video of someone making themselves out to be anything other than a government plan, proposing that Buddhism is militia propaganda. It still is. That's why it doesn't fit anything that's immediately valid. I knew, by the way, this video struck upon something in the body that whatever they're using to misrepresent their aims is common in the USA, baby. It affects everyone's lives. This is how I have read things. It's also in the videos. It has the vibe that they're giving an oration in Congress with the following geese bow of a battleship. I've rightly suspected I can use this knowledge to promote well being or a train wreck in someone because it's in tune with the human heart. This isn't something a spiritual guru can even talk about because everyone would leave due to their perennial complexities. I hate how this has been claimed by broad paigans who don't know anything about it. And then they make everyone mistake that there's some orange juice in the flattles. It's just because they're human and confused, and if I may say so, hired, that anything resonates, as Angela McIntyre McGrew might say. The heart is an organ related to the brain's emotional experience, with the rest of the human body involved. Believe it or not, this is beyond anything you'll read off the shelves already, in the way I mean it. These experiences are mistranslated due to what essentially amounts to mind control. That's why. People are congregated by the same insanity that the Prus used to make it as if killing a Hami in the war zones is like COD and not a human on human action. Because it's not a natural sense to mistake yourselves as in a particular place. You cannot argue that there's any impetus for the conflicts. You're frankly busted toys. This doesn't mean that you're everywhere, such malarkey Hube. There's an inverted pyramid scheme of what constitutes intelligence. Someone who's intelligent must be happy, not that this happened since it's prevented carefully. Look at their faces on the television. It is solely, only, and wholly over hallucinated conflicts. I suspect that they will do anything to downplay my triumphant healthiness in their view, because in their view I'd abuse myself, but this is to show how far I can actually disobey the clerical pediatricians and be fine. They're lying about human health. It's because of this bullshit. I suspected they'd even intoxicate my surroundings, but this is the kind of thing which apparently can't be said about, which would otherwise be entirely predictable with a more reasonable view of vested studiousness. And vested studiousnesses. It's because they misrepresent their hard headedness about facts, figures, but this constantly leaks through also. That's how they actually are. They're pitiful examples of adults, actually. That's how distinctly different it is in everyone's real lives. An adult is positive towards the people who don't have voices, for instance. I found my voice, thank you very much. Although this gives away some of what I was doing in my elephant tusk, I used it also to wash away their presence in my neuronal LASIK. It has a second line of text. They'll meet this with a spelling bee. It's actually a necessary book, but the way I'm sharing some of what I was doing indicates that I thoroughly am conscious of how the publishing people are intruders in these precious, licentious pipubbles, too. People are trying to get famous, but they can only be so cool and be taken in by the paparazzo. I'm disinterested in spelling, but I have a wonderful vocabulary. It's because I'm actually talking about real things. That's how sure I am that their entire venture is unworthwhile, but there's no renunciation to take either. It's an impossible situation. I gave this rank to give the proper view of my extreme intelligence. There's not an actual place for it, so I sympathize with the bums. I am absolutely doubtless that my brain is both capable of and has dealt capably with the real circumstances they made available. Absolutely so. I have the prepoducio that'll make fuddy of the army strong. They must be mostly compensating for the fact that everything they're hired to do is, to the human body, both stupid and useless. One example of this mind control, which is clearly military in origin, is to give someone the sense that they're God. I have had some headache with this because it resonates with the fact that a human being is capable of having a greater effect on things. I hate sometimes almost most of all this perennial shit about being in union with God. I know it's because it's a larger intrusion than they've let tell to anyone is leaking through. All the videos about this have the same feeling that they're set up and choreographed. This would leak through even if not. It's supposed to give someone the avoidance of harsh thrash and bash, such as encountered in Iraq and Afghanistan. That's more like reality, but they aren't even accommodated to these realities. I have to say something a few times because it should be actually gotten. They've taken this up too. This flawless sense in the human body of liking and disliking things is chilled out and not agitated. They're constantly co-opting this bit to justify the actual neuroses, as if someone didn't like something, they'd go hysteric even in lesser options. The brain is perfectly capable of handling inconvenient and inturbulent news because it's capable of handling natural interface. That's how co-opted all this has been. One obvious remedy to these neuroses is the marijuana flower. It's not meant for only some, and that isn't bulwark to mention. The bit about what comes from this earth and can be consumed with some enjoyable effect should be. But actual causes of the neuroses are that from the beginning, nobody is dealing with the fact that they don't want to do anything that they're doing. And then because of how they mishandled dealing with this secondhand advancement of the problem. They make it out like someone would go giddy from poisonous gases or hibbery from spasms from psychoses, but that's propaganda, by facts only. I even like my special use of the word gas at one part in Elephant Tusk. I've repeated it to show how crucial it is that you should be able to hear poetic undertones. It's not really that the message or the meaning would lessen now that I've repeated the word differently, with a different poetic undertone, but I want it to be a smash, a real smasher. I expected I would be deprived of this route of entry. This is something about how they chop up news broadcasts to make it seem more nationalistically emotional. But the emotions aren't naturally, organically, chemically nation proud, even in a wee bite. I had a feeling in school I was being tested whether I met these basic problems with the sociopathy and the narcissism as a right to citizenship. A permit to be allowed anything in the way of basic needs and delights. They'll try to psychoanalyze this estimation of the public education as proved in the oh so charming school teachers, but that only proves that you are crazy because these problems exist, and in order to get by, you make it as if they don't every day of your lives. Your lives are bullshit. I didn't mean anything spiritual or religious by this proclamation. I suspect the therapists are turning out trained actors. I'd like to keep going, but I'm afraid I'll have to drop out. Do you hear this as giving any esteem to your lives? There's something else I realized, which is about the disinclination to dirt, actually. It's still important, but I say that with a tear in my eye. I like to scrub a dub too now and then, but I'm no longer on a routine of cleanly boy. This is also to make a point. You seem antihistemic, but I'll spell wrong for a reason. To the dirt. I frequently use this poetic voice in my elephant tusk. It's because I'm clawing at you, trying to get you to realize you don't care about anything real. You can pretend I'm talking about something else, but I'm not. It's not what they call apathy, obviously. It's like Nazi Germany. Something important about these psychedelics, the mushrooms, anyways, is they get you to experience things differently. That's all. It's that misrepresented in your daily lives, but not like a fucking reducing valve. Do you hear how I mean this? I had some odd experiences with what they call entity contact that I wrote into Elephant Tusk by making fun of how literal everyone takes to brain language programming, which I said out of earshot. I realize these experiences are stupidly mistranslated due to religion. There's something to do with the fact that we should all be more Picasso. I say this a bit like a Smallville advert. That's what my goddess always whispers to me inside my body. We could be amazing beings, but we settle for less. But Kesey clearly sold out because of his Mary Sue. I say this in the same poetic voice. You're obsessed with reducing my unheard statements to someone else's discography. It's because that allows you not to make do with anything inconvenient to what you call the mind, but that's taken up by the CIA. This still applies anywhere else, essentially. I'm sure of it. The most inconvenient thing to you, anyways, is that under such circumstances, you can't be employed and feel good about yourselves authentically, ever. You're oleanders, damn bully psychonauts, but oleanders mostly, about what you're missing out on. You suck, frankly, but it's a fact. Whether you like it or not, because it feels stupid to the human body and useless to the human body, this is something to do with a subsequent life. I know there is no subsequent life because I know I'm a human being. Please hear that. It's crucial. The economic problems are all roundabouts to get around the fact that if people were sane, the monopoly money, as I call it in my book, would be redirected from the military and federal agencies to the well being of the people. And stop with those fancy police cars. It's not actually complex. You cannot expect the results of the education to handle money in any way less than PJ or P. Diddy. That's what I mean by your stupidity. It doesn't matter what you learn, you're stupid. Probably, if I have to speak your language, the taxes are all going to ways of committing fraud so they can pass the polygraph. This is related to the Rome fizz that nobody talks about sanity unless they can arm strap someone to the chips and negate what they mean. Then they use the same dynamic to demand more attention in that kind of relationship. This isn't a mother complex. Human beings aren't designed to care too much about their families. You simply don't grow up. This misdefinition of maturity is something awful, but don't mistake that as Alan Watts could have gotten this, or an Alan Watts could have ever gotten it. I have discovered the right experiential technology of the human body. They were just confused people too. I had to be an independent writer to write everything independently, regardless of the gross outcome, to make a point about publishing. There's no way the Iraq War and a free press could coexist. They made this point with Snowden and Assange, I'll say once again. The things people go to when they want to get something are the psychology racks, which include the mystical literature, the self help literature. Surely they check up on this based on my life experience. That's why I'm such a political figure. As what they call a hippie, like a racial slur in some respects, I can get how a woman might feel when they're assaulted or they're spoken down to, but the natural response is to walk away than to get back at them if needed. Or so desire. What I've seemed to get from pot and steam and speed and mushrooms is that you cannot actually dislike a stimuli without a reason entailing some unnatural accommodation. They're wrong about brain centered intelligence in the sense that it's actually a cellular intelligence. I refuse to read more because they take that up too. My brain science only deals with what exists to the human body, so it's like, once again, the modern physics of human behavior. I refuse to make mihachos feel like buff, buffy sliders. There's always something girly, as they'd put it brusky, about how they're employed, so they take it out on sliders. Oh, and also, by the way, the brain uses strange states to do something with reorganizing the distribution of the intents and usages and purposes. So they have the entire definition of hallucinating wrong, dead wrong. It's necessary to have strange states to deal with the strange state that you're already in. It's not a natural condition, but this goes against society. People might chaperone, but then they turn back and they're remorseful by themselves. This never occurs for me, the zebra. I also realize not so much a deficiency of self esteem, but a deficiency in esteem about feeling attractive. It's not even worth it to expand upon much. Because the entire sex game is built on fitting in, it's not only the woman's fault. But that's what I call empowerment. I mean that people are resisting a sensory level of intensity where they might be attractive. People are loathsome towards themselves for anything responsible at all. That's something I noticed in the Stephen Vigneault character, but I don't much like picking on specific forms of it. But I have to use the experiences I've had. There's all sorts of bullshit trickery in literature trying to get around this. It's not some kind of genius when they do that. When they do that shit. I'm certain that people hate themselves for anything responsible. That's genius. I'm a drug activist too. It's okay to be multidisciplinary. I stand by my use of drugs and I went overboard free fall to try to make a point about how misrepresented adaptability is. It's not a special example in this example. I've seen how people hate themselves. People don't let this part of the brain come online. Editing dials down the message. I refuse to dial down my message or get it out in any way that's less than an absolutely true impact crater, if I can. That's more on all of you to make fun of poetry contests. They've taken up absolutely true, but it just means to know anything definitely. Don't mistake that it's not a dystopian place. There's a reason nothing in education, whether state college or abroad, convinces the brain of definitely knowing the material. They call the US a world power in the melting pot, so by their own criterion, they can't say I'm incapable of saying things that wouldn't apply across the world plateau. One reason I told Nashay rather than a suck off and her Banny Sanders that I'd break in and smug the chives out of Ellis is to make the point that since I know I'm innocent, I should be able to joke about myself as if I weren't. And this indicates that she is insane. There's something about this in PKD's last book, but it's only skimming how the intense the problem is, and barely, very barely. I made it out like her facial aperture skelt about with something ET to Brittany, but this is actually something which indicates a muscular complication from being hired. I frequently twerk my jawlining about to blend in. This is due to some breakout of my experience, which now includes the cellular organizer. There's a reason people dislike their mothers or their immediate relatives, which indicates the relationship should end. I kept trying to tell this to Catherine, and not in a way that should be like a breakup letter. People are capable of handling the actual states of relationships they're dealing with escargot. This is bantied about in trans talk. I took Jack's side because this all makes it clear she tortured him in some other way than mounting Patrick. I also knew Jack never touched Tamara and Natasha. Since I have to act as if I'm bound, I'll say so, because he could relax. I can't stand the expectation that I don't say these things because it leads to life moving forward and has to do with the actual biological sense of justice. To give the sense of how intelligent the cellular sense of reality is, I'll add Jack could only relax sometimes. It's like cooling the gills, to use language from my elephant tusk. To deal with this, Joel became a bullshit artist, like anybody. He's utterly neglectful of the fact that I exist. This is something I'm teaching to people. Hopefully, that struck the right chord. People have to deal with these things, but the real psychology is in the wide view. Although I clearly detest family because of what it stands for, I always loved Jack, but I left this mostly unspoken. He was still a pansy bitch. That's what people make of themselves these days. Violence should be under justice, but without compromising the same looseness that handles goofiness. But I'm far more than Aleister Crowley ever was. You cannot escape the misuse of justice that constitutes pot arrest, or say it's prevented from the rest of the jailhouse. Cops are idiots. I is a reference of communication to a human being based on one's biological experiences. They've co opted this astrobundously. Who knows what and who says what as a factual matter of the right brain function? This takes out the groom on saving face. Expendables see expendables. I see these expendables. Truly. When I tear apart advice, I mean, as you are not yet happy, you should not yet give anyone advice. I timed this out in my life, and nobody else seemed to at all. I'm happy every day of my life. It shows up on my face scan. That's psychopathy. That is psychopathy. People make it extremely unnatural to admit that they don't know what's up till the electrocardiograph sayonara's. I never made this mistake. I know a lot. It's not stressful. I'm not controllable in part because I'm not very adverse to going outside, but I know more than all of you. The people in my brain are the people out there. Out there. This is like cellular oxygenization. I don't really mean that there's people in there, or that I'm like anyone else, or that we're the same. I have to say this. You're undeveloped people. I am truly myself an animal. I'm an animal. I mean, this is where your money goes to, and that is where your money goes to. That's in fucking Sanskrit. You are not divine. Please put down the payphone. I have signed my resignation. If these people were fucking outside, it would weed out the Pascals. This means that in order to be healthy, you need to understand that there's many people. I have been hit before. It's not the end of the world.